the last release from OpenAI was GPT-5 from August 7, 2025, which means the upgrade GPT-5.1 on November 12 makes the release cycle 97 days. Now for Google, the release of Gemini 2.5 was made on March 25th, and the entire community was waiting for the release of a much anticipated Gemini 3, which came out on November 18, which makes their release cycle 238 days as far as major releases go. Okay, why am I bringing all of this up? It's because during this period, a lot has happened in the AI industry. Chinese open models has had huge progress with their releases like Kimi K2 Thinking on November 6th, Ling 1T on October 9, Minimax M2 on October 27th, Qwen 3 on April 28th, as well as American counterparts like Claude 4, Claude Opus 4.1, Claude Sonnet 4.5, all of which are impressive in their release cycle. And we're also expecting big things from Grok since their last release of Grok 4 on July 9th with recent 4.1 upgrade, and now we are anticipating what the next model holds. And before talking about the specifics of GPT 5.1 and Gemini 3, it's important to address that even just a few weeks ago, the AI industry was raving about Chinese models. And now our newsfeed is inundated with the American models, and the competition is boiling up hotter than ever, considering that the DeepSeek R1 event that shook the world wasn't even a year ago when it happened back in January this year. But here's a critical question. Why does the release of Gemini 3 and GPT 5.1 matter? First, Gemini 3 was trained completely on Google's TPU, and this has a huge implication when it comes to the AI industry's reliance on NVIDIA's card, especially given that Google is also lending out their TPUs to Anthropic and Midjourney. So Gemini 3, which they're claiming as the most intelligent model, goes to show that even the top state-of-the-art models can be done without relying on NVIDIA chips. Now that's not to say NVIDIA is in dire straits. NVIDIA is doing just fine. In fact, their earnings call today showed that they beat analyst expectation not only in their Q3 revenue, but also in their earnings per share. And as you can see, their aftermarket is definitely rewarding this. But I do think Gemini 3 is yet another reminder of how strong of a position that they are in for a long term. If the AI race is a marathon, Google has a strong capital expenditure position, huge access to training data, and their own TPUs. And I wonder if this is one of the reasons why Berkshire Hathaway continues to invest in Google in the midst of them growing their cash positions. Now, OpenAI also released the model GPT 5.1, and they also silently released a new model called GPT 5.1 Pro, which is just one day after the release of Gemini 3. This just goes to show how much strategy goes into model releases. Even looking at how Grok 4.1 was released one day prior to Gemini 3's release. Now let's take it back to the basics. When we're talking about AI, what we're really talking about is the intelligence. How good is Google at demonstrating intelligence with their Gemini 3 model? And how good is OpenAI at demonstrating their intelligence with the GPT 5.1 Pro model? And we have people on two different sides of the camps. We have people who care about how the model performs in the real world, like coding tasks, and we also have people who go by how the model actually feels. And depending on what actually matters to you, your opinion on the matter will be different. And honestly, where all of this leads to is AGI. And yeah, I fully understand and fully agree that LLMs alone probably will never reach AGI, setting aside what AGI even means, which is totally a separate video for another time. But my point is this. Right now, we're doing all the manual work that actually goes into training AI models. But what if all of these manual tasks like gathering data for pre-training, optimizing hyperparameters, aligning the model in post-training are all automated? Will we then reach singularity at that point? I mean, if we figured out a way to automate all of these manual tasks, could we then have reached AGI by inherently letting it do all of that by itself? Now, I realize that LLMs have a huge flaw where it basically freezes its knowledge the moment training is done. But once we have gigawatt level compute available like Stargate and Colossus, where AI models like GPT 5.1 or Gemini 3 can theoretically be trained in less than 24 hours, the path to singularity now starts to seem decently close, doesn't it? With that said, I do think the release of Gemini 3 and GPT 5.1 Pro, we're still working out the kinks. And one benchmark that I'm personally interested in is from artificial analysis called Omniscience Index. This benchmark shows you the credibility of the model, where if the model scored 0, then the model is as often correct as it's often wrong. And if it tilts positively, the model is actually more often correct than it's false, and vice versa. And this also rewards abstention, which basically means if the model isn't sure about its answer, it says it's unsure rather than guessing the answer or just hallucinating it. And we got Gemini 3 Pro that scored 13, Claude 4.1 Opus still taking the second place at 5, and GPT 5.1 High at 2, and close fourth for Grok 4. And as we reach closer and closer to AGI, I think credibility of the model is going to matter more and more, where the model is able to demonstrate its ability to be more objective rather than actually hallucinating answer. Okay, I realize that I only covered the significance of these models rather than covering the actual use cases and the typical ways that model reviews are actually done. And thankfully, you have a lot of YouTubers who are faithfully doing that, so I fully recommend checking out those channels for more in-depth reviews. Well, I'm just trying to share my thoughts on the AI industry in general and how I'm excited about these models and why they matter.